So my name is Moran, and I've been a doula for around 10 years, nearly 10 years now. I got started in being a doula from my first birth, which was very traumatic and quite challenging. And so I actually decided after that birth not to have any more kids. And so it took me a number of years until we kind of tried for my second. And with my second, I actually got a doula, and it was the most amazing, empowering experience I ever had. And I was like, okay, the seed has been planted, and I knew this is what I wanted to do. And so that kind of got me going to where I am today. The reason I started kind of becoming a doula, and the thing that kind of inspired me to, have a home birth and think that home birth is gold standard in my eyes, is because in my experience, when I got pregnant, and the minute you pee on the stick, you're like, yep, I'm pregnant. You go to the GP and they say to you, okay, well, have you got private health insurance? And I was like, yeah, finally can use it. And so the GP just gave me a list of obstetricians. And I was like, okay, well, I really don't know who's who on this list. And I just called around, and one was available because she was due around Easter time. So it was really hard getting an obstetrician. And then basically throughout the pregnancy, I didn't really seek out information. I really didn't know about anything to do with birth. And so the only book that I read was What to Expect When You're Expecting, which I do not recommend, because it really didn't provide me with any tools. It just gave me the standard of, this is developmentally what your baby's going through. These are kind of the signs of labor. This is what you'll be offered in the hospital, but nothing that I could kind of use as a guide for myself. So when I saw my obstetrician during my prenatal appointments, he kind of mentioned to me that at around 40 weeks, if I don't go into labor, that he'll book me in for an induction. I didn't know what that really meant because I didn't really seek out that information, but I knew it was something that I didn't really want. I did want to have a natural birth, but I didn't kind of know what that would look like. And so I actually went into spontaneous labor 2 days before my estimated due date. And the first contraction that I felt, I was like, holy shit, I don't want to do this. And so because I had a lot of stuff going in my head, and I had also a lot of childhood trauma that I had not processed through, that just came to me. And I was like, no, make this stop. And so because of that, my mind was stopping my body from going into labor. So I was just having these contractions that were not really going anywhere. And so I ended up having a very long labor. And basically once I arrived in hospital, I got the plethora of everything that they would offer in terms of medical intervention. So when my obstetrician came like a knight in shining armor and said, are you ready to have this baby? Grabbed the forceps and took her out. I was like, I don't care how you take this baby, I'll just take this baby out. And I felt a sense of relief that it was over and that I've survived. And so after that, I felt really defeated. I felt like that's not what I wanted. And I felt as though like I was a survivor of war. I was like, I'm lying here with my baby. I didn't feel that instant connection. And I felt really traumatized with the experience that I had. And I was like, how do women end up having 2-3 babies like this? I just didn't understand it. And so I kind of got on with life. And I remember for that first year was really mentally challenging. I felt really emotional, and I definitely had postnatal depression, and it was really hard for me. And I said to my husband, this is the last biological child you're ever having from me, because it's not happening again. And so years passed by, and I really knew that I wanted to have more children, but I was petrified. And so when we got pregnant with my second, a friend said to me that one of her friends used a doula. And I was like, what's a doula? Like, I had no idea what a doula was. And it was like, I think it was like 2008, and you had to actually research what a doula was. And so I looked it up, and I was like, holy shit, I want one of these. I was like, I want a doula. And so I met with a doula that her friend had, and I instantly felt a connection. And I was like, this is what I need. This is what I need. I need somebody who knows me, who knows my triggers, who knows my fears, who will guide me through this, who will normalize the situation for me and my husband. And so the only thing I did, like the first time, I went through a private hospital. And I think that I went through a private hospital because I needed a safety blanket of having that as if something were to go wrong, I've got that as my backup plan. And so as I was going through a pregnancy, everything was fine. And at one of the appointments with my obstetrician, he kind of slid the epidural consent form across the table to me. And he said, "Oh, Moran, can you please just sign that for, the day you go into labor?" And I was like, "No, I'm actually not going to have an epidural this time." And he gave a little bit of a chuckle and he was like, "Oh, women in labor, they change their minds all the time." And I was like, "No, you know what? I know what an epidural is. I know what the risks of an epidural is. I will sign it if I need it in labor." And so he put it away. I went into labor in the middle of the night at about 3 o'clock. And I remember waking up because I did so much work on myself mentally throughout that pregnancy to get myself ready for labor. And I woke up and I remember feeling that first contraction. I was like, yes, I'm going to show myself how powerful I am. And so I went back to sleep. I woke up in the morning. I had a few more contractions. And then I went for a walk. I remember my husband and I went to the bakery, had a croissant, had a contraction and breathed through it. It was a wonderful day. And then as things started to get more intense, my doula came over and she went out for a walk with me. And then things again started to intensify. And then my waters broke. And I remember my doula looking at me and she said, "We better go to the hospital because you're about to have your baby." And I said to her, "No, I don't want to go to the hospital." I said to her, "Fill up my bathtub." And then she filled up my bathtub. I got in and I had her 45 minutes later in my bathtub. And I remember that feeling as though it was yesterday because nobody can take that feeling away. And it was the most powerful feeling you could ever experience in your life. And that's when I knew that birth wasn't just about that day. It changed my life. It changed the way I mothered my children. It changed the way I felt about myself. I felt like I was invincible. I could do anything. And I've had this new sense of me that I've never had before. I just felt like there was nothing that could stop me now. And so when people say it's just one day, I now know that it just isn't. It's not just that one day because I knew that the birth that I had so many years ago, I felt powerless. I felt like somebody just took all my power away and I had no say. And in this birth, I was taking my power back. And it felt amazing. And it just drives me to, want for women to feel this way. And every time I walk out of birth and a woman sees her sense of power, I was like, yes, this is what women need to feel. So the role of the doula, or essentially what I kind of see as the role of the doula, is not just, in birth, we always think of the baby. And we don't give as much emphasis on the mother. And we kind of use the mother as sort of the vessel for getting the baby out. And when I got asked, "Why did you want to go into this work? Is it because you want to hold babies? Because you decide not to have any more?" And I was like, no, I actually came into this work because I want to hold mothers. They need to be held. So for me, a doula is about going back to ancient times where women were supporting women in birth and just giving them that attentiveness and care that they need. It's about being with that woman, giving that continuity of care, having that one-to-one support, making sure that she has that support that she needs throughout the labor so that she never feels alone. And if she hits a wall or hits a crisis of confidence moment, she knows that there's somebody there that knows her and is able to guide her through it. And a doula is also there for the partners. The partners are in this situation that they've never been in before. We've only in recent times kind of brought partners back into the birth space and given them so much responsibility, and they don't know how to support these women. So it's about kind of facilitating that so they're able to enjoy the birth and being able to be really present for that woman. And so a doula is about giving that, lots of information, guiding her through. So in home, it might look like, just giving her lots of love and care. It might be just saying to her, "Do you want to try this active birth position or that active birth position," to help the baby kind of realign itself. And it's about just giving them the space and the sacredness to really honor this space and time for what it is, because it's the birth of a baby, and we tend to forget that in our society. We tend to kind of bypass that and kind of go, well, let's just have this baby and be done with it. But it's just much more than that in birth. So that's for me what a doula is all about, really. So in essence, the difference between a midwife and a doula is that the midwife provides that medical care. She's there throughout the pregnancy and the birth to ensure that the mother and the baby are doing well. So health-wise, the mother is doing well and the baby is doing well. Where a doula comes from a different type of role. So I actually had a birth where the mom was birthing her baby, and she looked at the midwife and she said to me afterwards that she saw the midwife as sort of like the mother figure, and then the doula is like her sister, just there holding the space and ensuring that she had everything that she needed. So the doula's role is more to give that emotional, physical, and mental support, and to be able to kind of make sure that surroundings are what they need to be for the mother to feel safe to birth. And that's kind of the difference between the doula and the midwife. But in essence, the doula as well, in today's times, it's about also teaching the mother about her choices in birth. It's about educating the mother so that she knows if she wants or doesn't want something during the pregnancy or labor, and she knows what the evidence-based options she has around that. It's about teaching her relaxation techniques. It's about teaching her how to let go of, belief systems that she had about birth that might have come from her mother, her sister, her friends. It's about kind of relearning what she thought birth was and kind of educating her about what birth can be. And that's what the doula really, in essence, does. In the event that the mum had to transfer for whatever reason, and to be honest, I've attended a lot of home births and have rarely seen home birth transfers because the mum is in such a protective environment, and because the midwives and the doula works really well together in facilitating that environment for her. She feels very safe, so there's hardly times where they do need to transfer. But in the event that they do, the doula then goes along with the mother into the hospital. And because they've had these conversations before the birth, she's then prepared for any eventuality. So we kind of run down through her birth preferences in the event that there was a transfer, and kind of looked at her options as to what would happen in that case. And so it's not something that she would feel traumatic about, because she's kind of worked through those scenarios, and because it would have been done in a very kind of not rushed emergency way, then the mum doesn't have to feel like it's out of her control. And most women that have birth trauma today are the ones that weren't respected, felt like it was out of their control, they weren't feeling heard, and this is not the case. The mother has decided to have a transfer, or she necessitated a transfer for a particular reason, and she still has her support team coming in with her into the hospital, which then makes the birth still a positive birth at the end of the day. What doulas bring to the birth space is that once we arrive at the woman's home, the partner opens the door and takes a big sigh of relief. And he goes, "Thank the goodness Lord, the doula is here." Once, the birth partner kind of sees us there, they take like a step back just a little bit in terms of just giving them the time to be with the woman without having to think of everything that's going on in that space. So in terms of what we kind of do with women, we help them with position changes. We help them making sure they're eating, they're drinking. We make sure that, sometimes, if the baby's malpositioned, we get them to change active birth positions quite often. We give them lots of comfort measures. We do massage. We use oils and essential oils to sometimes kind of bring on surges that, might have slowed down. We make sure that they're getting some sleep if they need to get some sleep. It's a time that, birth hasn't yet gotten to the active stage and they just need some rest. And we're making sure that they feel safe. Okay, they feel safe, they feel nurtured, they don't feel like anything's wrong with the birth. We normalize it for them, okay? And a lot of the time, the partners will just look at me and kind of go, "Is it okay? Is this normal?" And I'm like, "Yeah, she's doing good." And that's all they need. They need that reassurance that what they're saying and the way that this woman is behaving is just like any other woman, okay? And once that happens, the birth just goes perfectly well. Like, women just do what they need to do. They don't feel any tension. They don't feel any stress. When their surges are finished, we make sure that they're lowering their shoulders, their body is relaxing so that they're able to just do what they need to do without any pressure. We're not talking about time limits. We're not, we're trying to get them out of their mind and into their body. And we're just reminding them that they're strong. They're capable. And when they're reminded of that and then they have their baby, they're like, "I did this." And it's the most powerful feeling that you could ever have. And every woman deserves that. Okay, so a woman birthing at home, a woman birthing in the hospital, every woman deserves that feeling. And the doula's not there to take over the birth for them, but she's there to remind them of their inner strength. because they know they've got it, but they just need those reminders. They just need to be able to have that space and that sacredness that birth is, to be able to know that they can do it as well. The way that the doula kind of goes into that space and helps the partners enjoy the birth, essentially, all starts in pregnancy. So a lot of the time I'll do work with, the couple, and we'll talk about what does birth look like. I always encourage the partners to look at videos to see women birthing, so that, when the woman's making these noises or roaring or becoming really primal, they don't think anything's wrong with that. You know what I mean? They were like, yep, I know what that looks like. We also get the partners really educated on the things women can say in labor. So a lot of the time when a woman hits transition, she'll say the craziest things, and things that she doesn't necessarily mean, and things that weren't on her original kind of birth plan. And we teach the partners what those things could be. And we talk about, well, how would you respond to that? What would you do? Would you kind of try to rescue her? Or would you try to empathize with her and move along with her and kind of say to her, we're doing this together? What kind of things would you say to empower her? So we talk about what that could be and how that would look in the birth space. We also talk about, what happens through the shifts of the transition. What if she hits a wall? Okay, what will you do if she hits that wall? How will you comfort her? What will you do? What will you say? And how will it look like now you're becoming a family? So we talk about what will that look like as a family with having a baby? It won't look like the same thing as what you had before. What things will she need in that postnatal period to make sure that she's doing well, making sure that, you have to mother the mother so she can mother the child. How will that look like? So a lot of the time I find that when the partners are educated about birth, and especially about the choices she has in birth, and are educated about the evidence-based options that women have, because a lot of the time, if you do a transfer to hospital and they're offered so many things, the partner's like, oh, what do I do? What do I do? And we talk about, okay, but what are your options then? You don't always have to jump to pharmacological things. There's other things that you can do. So when the partners are educated, I find the birth just goes so much better. It's just a different pathway, and they feel empowered by doing this together, and they don't feel helpless in that situation. And that's the beauty of it.